Hi, this is Let's Talk Data, the Maputo Protocol edition. I'm Mushiri. And today we're delighted to have with us Faiza Jama Mohamed, Executive Director of Equality Now. And today is a particularly awesome day because today is the 15th anniversary of the Maputo Protocol. So can I say Happy Maputo Day?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
All right. So it's great to have you here as someone who's been at the forefront of working on implementation of the protocol. I mean, even from pushing for the signing, ratification, implementation of the protocol. And but I'd like you to share with us a little bit about how you got started. How did Faiza end up here working on these issues?
Right. Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. And it's a great day for African women as we celebrate the protocol at 15. We came a long way, and there's a long way still to go. Why I got involved with, or how I get involved in this? Well, basically, from early on in my life, I did not see any discrimination or violence in my home setting. But as I started to come out of home, interact in schools, at work, I realized in some settings or contexts, other families, it was different, and there were issues that was bothering me. Such as early marriage, domestic violence, female genital mutilation, those things. So I started to get interested in, the stories of other women, and ended up working on with UNFPA on social issues.
Was this like your first job? Your first encounter with employment as such?
Yes, during college I did some internship programs with the UN agencies, with FAO, with WFP, but I found UNFPA the most kind of relevant as on the issues they were working on, maternal health, mortality, and then eventually moved on to work with Care International, and then the war in my country happened, and that is the time when I see also a lot of violence against women happening, and how women were in different spaces but not coming together to address, because a lot of times focus was on what do you call humanitarian support, relief.
Which country was this?
Somalia. In right after Ziad Barre's regime has fallen, and then I started now focusing on those two things, mostly building civil society to, come with a breakthrough, so that we are out of this conflict. But also, how can we build coalitions among women, first in different locations of the country, but then joining those forces across the country to speak up and defend the rights of women. So I've been involved in those things when eventually I ended up joining Equality Now, and that just was a natural transition, because I read about Equality Now. I met with the founders during those times, and when an opportunity came to come and take up the Africa office, I decided to work with them, and I've joined them since 2000. When we opened the office here. So basically I'm driven by the injustices that I have seen outside my home setting, and the violence that was happening during the wartime, to get involved on the issues of women's rights, in human rights in general as well, and so that's how I got here.
All right. Are any of those coalitions and networks that you tried to build back then, are they still working?
Active.
It was in Somalia at the time?
Yes. No, actually the coalition of the civil society, which ended up with a name called Peace and Human Rights Network, was catalytic in terms of getting rid of the warlords eventually. So that I'm happy with that part of, of work of my past work, because there was a time where people were just talking to the warlords, the international community. A lot of peace conferences held, but nothing was happening, and people were hostage for the warlords, and civilians were not doing anything. So the lack of action also was contributing to the sustenance of the conflict continuing, But when we started discussing and reflecting and pointing fingers at each other, that we are also a problem because we are not acting, we are not bringing an alternative, is when people started to move on into action. And so, but there were other challenges, but things moved on. At least we have civilian government. Things are moving, although there is the threat of Al-Shabaab and all that. So new developments there. Yeah,
that's it's a fascinating outcome in a post-conflict, actually in conflict at the time, situation where civil society coalitions actually got together and worked on something such as providing an alternative.
Right.
We can't live under warlords in this way, having them only intermediate conversations with partners and friendly governments. So that was that must have been a really interesting time. I hope there's a book about this somewhere.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing. We are poor in documenting.
Yeah.
But I still would like to do that. To document basically that experience. Yeah.
Excellent. So at Equality Now is that when you got together with others to start a new coalition?
Well, yeah. It was in 2002. It's just like we were in 2 years into, it was our third year of the office opening, when the protocol development was ongoing. Actually, I was attending the African Commission session in 1999 in Rwanda, and they were already discussing, because the Commission was in charge of writing up the protocol as mandated by the OAU at the time. So WILDAF, Women in Law and Development in Africa, were leading on that aspect. And others were involved with the African Center for Democracy and Human Rights Studies in the Gambia. And so there were so many others, and I was fascinated in terms of the development that was going on. But somewhere in 2002, around mid, like let's say end of June, people started raising the red flag. It initially came from Femnet, which brought to our attention that there was a problem, and the problem was countries have generated a product that was not good enough for African women. Also, they had discussed, and there was only 3 articles that they were not agreeing, but everything else was a go. And the third problem was that AU was calling meetings, but they were not coming, so there was no quorum. So like 3 times they had to cancel the meeting because people were not coming together, countries were not coming together. So now the process that the AU follows is, when a protocol is being adopted, first it has to be deliberated by experts from the countries, and when that is done, then it moves on to the ministers who then look at it and approve it. Finally goes to the executive committee, and from the executive committee to the assembly for adoption. So it's that process. So it was not passing even the expert level, people were not coming together. So we decided that, after reviewing what was being circulated, we said yes, there's genuine concern for the protocol is weak and it doesn't reflect the realities of injustices that women in Africa were facing. So we felt like, okay, we need to immediately come and consult. So of course we didn't want to start a process by our own. We went back to all those organizations who were involved and who were leading the process. So WILDAF, the African Center, FEMNET, and it was a time crucial to come together, but because they were planning to have another meeting in January 2003 for the experts to meet and conclude on the protocol. But all the other organizations didn't have resources, though everybody agreed that it's important we meet face to face and discuss and deliberate on this. So that's the time then I mobilized resources from my colleagues in New York and said, we urgently need your support for this. So pull some money from wherever, and so we put together a meeting and invited not only those organizations who were leading, but from other organizations in different parts of the continent to come together, so that we are a representative group from different yes. Yeah. So that's we met in Addis, we deliberated, we went, paragraph by paragraph, article by article. People, discuss where the weaknesses are. We use CEDAW, the Convention on the Rights, on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which is the main UN, convention, and the only one available at the time in terms of women's rights, to look at, whether we are below that standard or we are, whether we contributing to make it better for African women. So when we concluded that process, we sent a delegation to the AU. We were in Addis. We heard while we were in the meeting that it was not going to happen, the expert meeting.
Was it a quorum problem again?
Again, a quorum problem, yes. So we went to see the acting commissioner of political affairs, because the political affairs department has oversight role of the African Commission, and it is, so that is naturally the department that was handling it. So, and even the gender was just a unit, they had only a unit, and it was not a big portfolio. In any case, the commissioner received us well. He saw there are a representation of women from different parts of Africa who are all concerned about this protocol. Basically, we said this is an embarrassment for Africa. If you adopt it in this form, you needed to strengthen it. You should do something better than CEDAW, building on the experiences since CEDAW was adopted, but not below it.
Not below it.
Yeah.
And set a new standard for the world, really.
Yes, exactly.
It was at that point the global benchmark.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So he was very open. He accepted our recommendation, which was to open the meeting when the meeting is convened, to open it up for the whole review of the protocol, so that they are not only discussing those 3 articles that they had issues with. He said, when I do that, you will also take the risk of losing some things, because everybody can now revisit it, and So we said we'll take that risk, So we came prepared, and he put a challenge to us that the issue of the lack of quorum. So you have to impress on countries to attend. So we took that up. We all deployed back to our countries, locations, and started now mobilizing countries to, make sure they send a delegation to. The first thing was South Africa. We were in the plane coming back, and they were in the plane because they had come for the meeting, and now there was no meeting, so they were going back. And they were disappointed, So we already linked it up with them. We told them the issues we have, and they invited us to come and, explain what the issues are. They were convening a meeting back home. So one of my colleagues attended and, briefed them. And we urged other countries to do similar meetings where civil society participates in the discussion. We were also urging them to come to the meeting, send experts from home, not from their missions in Addis, and also to include civil society in their delegates. So our agenda for the civil society was, that they could be our ally inside, to influence countries on what articles to support, to make this strong, the strong document we wanted. So that process worked well. The EU was amazed. Everybody came, and we deliberated for 3 days. He kept his promise. He opened the meeting, expanded the number of days so that the whole document can be revisited. Yeah, and I think African Union therefore made us proud by making that happen. And eventually, also when it was adopted, it was really something to celebrate.
Yeah, and it's really, like has been said by so many people, and a lot of us who've looked at it over the years. It remains a document, a protocol, a treaty that is the most progressive on the planet. And it's that's why also today is momentous day. 15 years of having this treaty in the continent, making progress and influencing how African governments and African nations are dealing with this issue. So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll hear a little bit about the formation of SOAWR, the Solidarity on African Women's Rights, and also what the challenges were at the beginning in terms of trying to get countries to sign and ratify this very progressive treaty. So we'll be right back.
Thank you.